Okay, now we're going to tape hand, wrist, and fingers, and this is a little difficult because really there's a lot of variables to it, depending on how much they're needing. I'm going to start as simple as I can. I like to put as little tape on as I have to. Put as little tape on as I have to and add to that if necessary. So first I'll pre-wrap, have them spread their hand out wide, and I'll just pre-wrap right around the tendon or wrist and just a couple inches up. And you got to get down to, let me see your other hand. You got to get down to that bump right on that proximal end of the thumb, and kind of right where that her hand starts to get bigger right there, kind of in this sort of fashion. If you stop right in the bend in her wrist, she's still going to be able to totally extend it, and it's not going to help anything. So right across the bend in her wrist, I'm putting that pretty snug. And I'll usually do 2 to 3 high, depending on their preference. Some like it halfway up the forearm, just depends on what they like. But big concentration is what are we doing right here in the bend of her wrist. And I'll put two layers of that on. And that right there is about as simple as we can go with to restrict her extension. So you can see that that does restrict her extension to some extent and her flexion. But if that's not enough, if she's still got pain with that, then we got to go farther down her hand, and then we'll include her hand. Out wide again. So this kind of requires basically a simple figure 8 spica around the wrist and hand. I'll put one more just around there just for something to anchor to, and then usually, especially with the size of her hands, you can go to 1-inch tape. And if I'm not including the thumb, I'm going to start kind of in the web space of her thumb and go away from it. Now I'm going towards it, right to the bend in her wrist, and we give it a little bit of pinch as it goes through the web space. I don't pull this tight, and then we can literally figure 8 that from there. And usually twice around their hand is enough. And that's the wrist spica there. Now you can throw one more on just to kind of clean that up and finish it off. But now that's going to restrict her extension even more. Okay. Now if that's not enough, which it should be, but if that's not enough, then, and if we're trying to restrict extension, we're going to flip her over, flex her just a little bit, and build a bridge on the bottom side. And this just amounts to about 3 pieces kind of fanned out. And then you kind of have to go and do everything over again to tie it off. So you've got that bridge and you've got that all sealed in there. And now she definitely is not going to go back very far. And then if she has problems with flexing her wrist, all you'd have to do is put that bridge on the top side. But she can't move it anyway. Okay, now if we need to include the thumb, you can pre-wrap that, wouldn't have to. But if we're going to include the thumb, I kind of said that backwards a second ago. If we're going to include the thumb, we're going to start going away from it. And we're still going to pinch as we go through the web space. And I'm literally laying that on there. I'm not pulling it tight. I hold this as I pull the tape off the roll so it doesn't get too snug there. and then we'll go one more. This one, see how our tape wants to keep going? Upper thumb, so let it for one wrap, and then it'll start going back down the other way. And then we're going to give a little pinch there because we're getting close to that web space. That angle wasn't exactly perfect, but that's going to give her MCP joint in her thumb stability there. Okay, if you would need to include that. Then, last step you could include, and this kind of is like our turf toe scenario, and you use 1/2 inch tape on this, and I'll put 2 strips on the top, two strips on the bottom, and then we'll tie this off on each segment of her finger. Very rarely would you have to do something like this, but it does happen from time to time. Now you're going to have to do another little figure 8 around her hand to hold those strips in place. And that's it, and that's going to at least limit her extension and flexion of that finger. And that's shouldn't have to do anything more than that. I guess there is, in certain situations, you could buddy tape fingers together, but that's pretty simple. Just a matter of taping to the next biggest finger if you can, just to use that other finger as a splint. Other than that, I think that's about all you would need to do in most situations.